All right, now we're talking agreement, and this time the agreement that we're talking about is the agreement between pronouns and antecedents. And just a quick review, a pronoun is a word in a sentence that takes the place of a noun. The antecedent of that pronoun is the noun that it actually replaces. So what we need to know about pronouns and the way they agree with their antecedents is they have to agree in three different ways. They have to agree in person, so they either have to all be first person or all be second person, etc. They have to agree in number. So they all have to be plural or they all have to be singular. And then they need to also agree in gender. Both need to be masculine or both need to be feminine. There's a couple tricky things as well that I want to go over before we get started looking at some examples. And the first one is the pronoun there. I really want to draw your attention to this pronoun because it's the number one error that I see in pronoun usage. And the thing to know about there is it's always plural. There's no exceptions to that rule. So when you see this sentence, each student sat at their desk. This is something that I typically see in student writing, so let's take a look and see if it works. We've got the pronoun there, and then we know the antecedent to there, so what it's referring to is each student. And now we said there is always plural, but each student is talking about singular objects, so we don't have agreement here. We've got to flip this, and the easiest way is to change that pronoun. So this should look like each student sat at his or her desk. His and her, gender neutral, and makes it singular to match up with that antecedent. The second trick that I want to talk to you about is that and who. So what you need to know about that is it's a relative pronoun and it's used to describe objects. Who is also a relative pronoun, but it's used to describe people. So you have the sentence, she is the teacher that assigns all the homework. All right? So that relative pronoun that is referring back to the teacher. So we've got a person, so instead of that for a relative pronoun, we need to have who. She is the teacher who assigns all the homework. So these are just a couple to keep your eye out for because they do get a little tricky. Let's take a look at some more examples. All right, this sentence, anyone can find their way home. So we talked about checking our agreement. The first thing we need to do is identify our pronoun that you've got underlined. Now we've got to figure out the antecedent. So who is there referring to? And in this sentence, there is referring to anyone. All right, so anyone is one of those lists, anyone is on the list of indefinite pronouns that takes a singular. So we need to make this there, we said was plural, singular. Since anyone is gender neutral again, we're going to throw up his or her in order to make these both singular. Next sentence, a doctor should speak kindly to his patients. Now this could work, and I think this would be really easy to miss. However, this pronoun, his right here, is actually sitting there being a little bit sexist. We've got the antecedent, which is the doctor, all right? We've got his. If we look at the gender of a doctor, it's really gender neutral. So what we need to do is make this gender neutral, and the singular gender neutral is to add in his or her patients so that they agree in gender. All right. The next sentence, if a person wants to be successful, you have to work hard. All right, so let's look at our pronoun, you, and you is referring back to a person. All right, a person, we're talking about somebody else, that's third person, but you is second person. So we've got to make these match up. We can change this to third person as well. If a person wants to be successful, he, and we could change our verb then, he has to work hard. It'll work there. We could also say he or she has to work hard. All right, and finally we've got the students that struggled stayed for help. So our pronoun is that. That's a relative pronoun referring back to students, and this is one of those tricky ones. Students are people. So we've got to shift this to who. The students who struggled stayed for help. So we walked through some basic ones. Let's look at a couple more advanced ones and see if you guys can get the hang of it. Neither of the boys wanted to give up his toy or their toy. Now I know it sounds natural to go and say there, but when you see this word neither, even though it looks like you've got a plural subject here, neither lets us know that it's one of those two. So we actually have to fill our pronoun in to match the neither, which is the singular. So it would be neither of the boys wanted to give up his toy. All right, and the last one, let's take a look at. Some of the students were asking his teacher, her teacher, their teacher questions. So we've got to really boil down, if this is our pronoun, what's it referring back to? It's not referring to the students, it's referring to some of the students, which is one of those indefinite pronouns there. But remember, some is an indefinite pronoun that's plural, which means we need to make this plural as well. So it would be some of the students were asking their teacher questions. All right? So I know that pronoun antecedent agreement can be a little bit tricky, but if you remember these rules and then check to make sure that your antecedents and your pronouns are matching in these three ways, you should be good to go.